slide here, we've also got some pictures of things associated with leaders. So I would ask them, well, what do leaders sometimes wear? Crown, robes. And we would get some more words on the board. If they couldn't give them to me, I would supply them just out of interest to try and extend the vocabulary. And I would say, remember that word at the beginning? Emperor? Well, we also have emperors. Does anybody know any emperors nowadays? I think there's one in Japan, but we don't have many emperors now. But they're very powerful people. At this stage, depending upon the level of the students and their ability to speak and give me information in English, I would possibly ask them, what kind of qualities do you think a good leader has? For example, does anybody have any views about Michelle Bachelet? 13 and 14-year-olds, again, it depends on your students, what they're able to say to you. But I can imagine some of my students would give me their opinions quite readily. So we would talk about characteristics or qualities that leaders have, such as generosity or judgment or bad judgment or other dishonesty, honesty, things like that. These words are very difficult, so I doubt that we would get very much in English from them, but they may be able to give words like honesto, honest, which I could then help to give them the noun, honesty, dishonesty, and it would be an opportunity to extend vocabulary. So at this stage on the whiteboard behind me, I would probably have 3 or 2 columns, one with types of leaders, one with qualities of leaders, adjectives or nouns, depending upon how my eliciting has gone. At this stage, I don't have any great purpose to get only nouns. That would be a too advanced stage. I think mostly we use adjectives to describe the qualities that people have, not only leaders, but people in general, and that's going to be more useful for them to have the adjectives. But we are going to see one word in the story we read. The word is vanity, which is not dissimilar to a Spanish word, but I don't think they will be able to give me that word at all. And that word is a noun. So I will be prepared to accept nouns for the second column that I have. And the third column that I would have on the right-hand side would be related to the question, what do leaders wear? And there we could have a crown, robe, jewels, and any other words that the students from these pictures or from their own knowledge can think of. This stage would probably take 5 to 10 minutes. It really depends on you, the teacher, and your class, and how forthcoming or the students are with you, how much they are able to do themselves, as to how long you would take eliciting vocabulary. If they don't have much English and can't give you productively the English themselves, there's no point in making it a long session. And the purpose is not to get a long list of words for them to learn here. We want to teach them words they're going to see in context. The reason for this eliciting stage is to get their interest and for them to be able to prove to themselves that they probably know more words than they think they know in terms of this subject. So that's the first stage, eliciting vocabulary from the whole class. Now we're going to go on to the story, and the students have no photocopies, nothing at this stage, they need no materials. This is a story that they're going to read, and this is the first paragraph that you can see behind me under the title, Rewriting the Story. The students won't see this. They won't see this until the very end. But we're going to start reading this story, The Emperor and His New Clothes, and I'm going to read the first paragraph to the students. They will see nothing of the story, they will only listen with their ears and their attention. I will introduce it by asking them if they know the story, if they can think what it might be about, taking any ideas they have, again, to trigger their interest, so they are in some way predicting what they might hear. Because predicting is a skill which really, really helps for students to understand. If we just come in cold and say, listen and write down what I'm saying, or listen and tell me what I've said, with no introduction, then poor students, it's very difficult for anybody in their own language or in another language to function that way. We all need context, and we all function with context when we listen and understand in any language. So having elicited some of their ideas, I will then tell them, right, you're going to listen to me. I'm going to read the introduction to the story. Please just listen, close your eyes if you wish, and don't pick up your pen, put your pen down, keep your copybooks closed, you don't need anything. Just listen to the sound of my voice and listen to the words, what I'm saying. How much can you understand? Some words you won't know, doesn't matter. You're going to see them later and you're going to hear them again. So you'll have 2 opportunities to listen. I will read at a reasonable place the story to the students, the first paragraph. After the second reading, I'll ask them to work in pairs, and I will go through the classroom designating the pairs if necessary. They may already be seated next to somebody else who they can work with. And I'll ask them to take their copybooks at this point and together in pairs to try and write down as many of the words they can remember. Now, some of the words are grammatical words and have little meaning. Well, they have a meaning, but they don't carry the content of the story. Words like and, words like to, words like he are all words which frequently appear in a language. So I'm going to say you can write down any words. There are little words in English like and the, which we're always going to use. You can include those as well. But what they probably, and what I expect them to remember most, are words with content in them. Things like lived, things like loved, things like years, things like clothes, which at a pre-intermediate level I would expect my students to understand both in the written and the spoken form. I would expect them to identify the sound and recognise the meaning. I would give them approximately 3 or 4 minutes and go around the classroom monitoring what they're writing with their partner. If they're struggling, obviously I would cut that session shorter. If they haven't understood much, maybe they need to hear it again, and that's important to see what your students are doing as they're working and to be flexible enough to adapt your lesson plan to either be quicker. If they're a very good class, maybe you don't need to read it even twice, and the students, without even comparing in pairs, can tell you exactly what you've just said straight away. That's for you to judge. Once they've written down the words in the book, do be careful at this point. Students will probably ask you, how do you spell this word or that word? At this point, the aim is just to get the words which have the meaning down for them on paper. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter if they misspell the words. That's not the main objective. So don't answer that question, just ask them to try and write down as they think is suitable. Then the next stage is to take the feedback from them. And at this stage, you're going to give out one of these grids, like the one we have here, which is filled up with the words, which I'm going to read. You'll take that grid, it'll be empty. The students will have, per pair, per 2 students, they will have a copy of this grid, but completely blank, just with numbers in the boxes. So, with that, you will ask them to write down the first paragraph, or write down the story, the first paragraph of the story that you read to them. You're going to ask them to write in pairs what you've read. And we're going to do it together as a whole class. The students are going to give you their suggestions at random. You can either nominate them or you can ask them to call out and put up their hands and give you the words. You will write down, the students at this point will write down the words as they come up. Something very important I've forgotten. Whilst the students are writing the words they remember, you as a teacher will write on the board their names. You can use their initials to write very quickly, the initials of each person, numbering them around the room. And you will draw 3 lines, 3 vertical lines on the board next to their names, which represent the lives these students have. This is going to be a game, and obviously students react much better at this age to games than they do to exercises. And if you call it a game, it often makes a big difference, even though they may accuse you later of making it into an exercise, or a dictation even, which is even worse for some students.